Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? It's me, Mr. 4K Upscaler. Okay, so a lot of you have been asking me, hey man, can you do a video and show us how the full version of Gran Turismo Sport looks on HDR on Samsung KS-8000? And it looks pretty good. I would say, hands down, this is probably one of the best HDR rendering games that I have seen on PlayStation 4. Is it better than Forza Horizon 3 and Forza 7? You have to remember, Forza Horizon 3 and Forza 7 are full-fledged racing games, okay? What I mean by that, they have so many different venues, so many different things in the environments where the HDR takes the full advantage. But Gran Turismo Sport truly gives you more options on the slider and on the exposure, because with the exposure and the HDR peak brightness, you can get that best possible vibrance of color and brightness and contrast. So anyway, I'm gonna kind of drive around here, then I'm gonna I particularly choose this level here just to show you how beautifully it looks. We're gonna switch through different time zones, but anyway, let's continue. Let me drive so you guys will listen to what I'm saying in the commentary, and then I'll tell you what I'm seeing in terms of HDR. Like, the one thing you will appreciate in HDR is the fact that whenever there's a certain light or horizon in the distance, whether it's the sunset or sunrise, you will definitely notice that with HDR here, and it definitely shows up here on HDR, especially in this game. And you will see that once I go through a replay, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Look, for example, just right here. Just look at the reflection of volumetric light reflecting onto that car. So yeah, HDR, in Gran Turismo Sport is definitely one of the best HDRs I have seen so far on PlayStation 4 Pro. And I don't say that lightly. If I say it, trust me, there's a good reason for it. Especially when you go to different types of levels where you get to choose, if it's dusk and if it's a dawn, or if it's the sunrise, sunset, midday, haze, cloudy, all of these things. Here, let's I'm gonna finish the race. I'm gonna skip through this, and then I'm gonna jump into the replay, because I want you guys to see the replay, and I'm gonna point out certain things on the replay. So here we are on the replay, and this is where the HDR truly is going to be popping out. So let's go do a photo mode really quick. Let's click on it. Like, in the distance right here, look at the vistas in the horizon. That's HDR at its best, rendering the peak brightness, the contrast ratio between the bright white levels and the deep dark levels, so including the white color gamut. Obviously the white color gamut, it's really visible here on the headlights. Even here you can see the dust, and even on this one right here. Let's choose this camera, for example, and You can see that clearly. The only reason you can see this headlight the way it's so detailed like this is because it has the HDR, a really good HDR. Okay, so let's exit and let's continue with the replay. Look, for example, right here, the headlights, right there, the headlights, and the backlight where it says Renault Sport on the tag, on the license plate. And the reason you see that so vividly, and the reason you see that dust so vividly, it's because of that HDR. And I know a lot of you guys would like to know, well, what sort of calibration are you using? Well, I'm going to go through that. I'm going to show you the calibration and everything, okay? I'm going to leave that at the very end, and I'm going to show you what type of calibration I'm using for Gran Turismo Sport. This is another great shot right here. Look at that car, for example. Look at the headlights right there on that car. I look at the depth of field and how well the peak brightness and contrast between the deep dark levels and bright levels, it's being perfectly rendered. This is due to a very good volumetric light and the exposure. Remember, you can also adjust how much of exposure would you like along with the HDR, and that also helps high dynamic range and the color look even more better. But you guys get the idea. Okay, what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna do a track that has a lot of sunset. You know, we'll do the one with the sunset so I can show you even more. Remember, when I say show you more, I'm talking about me analyzing it. I know you guys can't see high dynamic range. I know that. Everybody knows that. I'm not doing this video to tell you, hey, look at this. This is how HDR looks. I'm not doing that. HDR can only be experienced in person, okay? This video is just for me to analyze and to give you my thoughts and also give you my calibration settings for the HDR on Gran Turismo Sport. Okay, what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna show you some different types of venues and levels and different time zones to analyze the HDR, and then I'm going to show you my calibration for Gran Turismo Sport HDR mode. Okay, so we're going to go on a single race over here, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a daytime. This is the daytime where it's a bit cloudy with haze, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to go with the Focus GRB rally car. Or actually, yeah, we'll go with that. I brought my camera a bit closer so you guys can see it. And right off the bat here with HDR, you will notice just how much the cloudy weather and dust on the sand reflects with HDR. You know, when I say clouds and the dust, I'm talking about the clouds reflecting down on the ground and on the surface, and then the dust that picks up on the ground as well. So you can also see a haze. You know, this is something I wanted to talk about, is this HDR on this game. It's so good that you can even see a haze on certain levels, you know, or you can see humidity rising and a haze, which I think is pretty cool that they went that far to depict that as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to skip through this and I'm going to show you a replay of this level right here. Okay, so here we are on the replay right here, and I'm using a slow motion frame by frame. I just want you guys to see a couple of things here which I'm going to point out. Like, here's a great example of HDR. Look at the headlights. Look at both of these headlights. And okay, this is something I'm going to have to bring my camera closer. So I'm going to pull up my camera out of the tripod. Remember, what I'm doing here is I'm analyzing the HDR. I'm trying to show you why Gran Turismo Sport volumetric light adds more depth of peak brightness and detail in HDR, along with the ability to adjust the exposure. Now, you can also adjust the exposure on Forza 7 as well, so let's not forget that as well. But Gran Turismo Sport does a little bit more better in terms of rendering the HDR. Okay, so I brought my camera a bit closer and I made sure that my low light was lower so I can show you what I'm talking about. This is something that HDR does well in this game. When we talk about the peak brightness and when we talk about the exposure and the peak brightness and volumetric light, when you have these elements add into the graphics, the HDR will render this much better, because you already have a really good volumetric light and you got really good exposure on the light as well. Exposure means how much of detail of that atmosphere do you want to expose of that light, and that's what that is. And when you have that exposure, HDR will only render that more naturally, and you clearly can see it. You can actually count every and each individual LED light here. Let me show you. No, you can count every and each individual LED light here, along with all the headlights. Same thing here on the Audi. Hold on, let me get a little bit closer. Same thing here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unpause it and go frame by frame. As you can see, the HDR, it's rendering everything naturally. See that? See how the reflection just moved up and down? Okay, here, let me show you. If I go back over here, you will see that. And here, I'll click play really quick, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You see right here? Pay attention on the reflection right here, the reflection on the windshield. You can see the clouds moving, reflecting, and that's what HDR is doing. And look, once the clouds have moved, look at the windshield. See, and you can see it again. So that's what the HDR is doing here on Gran Turismo Sport. Now, of course, the graphics, a good graphical engine will definitely help high dynamic range look that much better. And Gran Turismo Sport, not only does it have a good graphical engine, but at the same time they spend a lot of time rendering that HDR with 1800p. I mean, even here you can see it, for example, even on the menu levels, you get to see it. You get to see the advantage of HDR, even right here. So the colors pop, the peak brightness definitely with volumetric light adds to the overall detail of HDR. Like look right here, for example, you know. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm going to show you what type of settings, custom picture settings I'm using for this particular GT Sport HDR. Remember, this is the HDR calibration. So of course we're gonna go to the settings, click to the expert settings, and there it is. Remember, HDR, it's always going to have backlit and contrast and brightness like this. It doesn't matter what TV you have, HDR and Dolby Vision will always set your backlit and your contrast to maximum. And your brightness is going to be at 50. Sharpness, to me, on Samsung KS-8000 and on this particular game, I felt 20, it's okay, because 20, it's really a threshold. It's the balance level, equilibrium threshold, which I believe it's perfect for this game, because I like to have a little bit outline for this particular game. Okay. Color, I bumped that up to 63. Now you guys are gonna say, well, why 63? Because this game has a lot of vivid colors. And I felt like, you know, leaving it at 50 or 55 it just doesn't give me that pop of color that I need. 63, it's not oversaturating. If I went to 73, then you can say oversaturating. Or if I went to 83, then you can say oversaturating. 63, it's not oversaturating. 63, it's perfect. Okay? Just enough color needed for this game. Digital clean view, this is something I'll always leave on automatic, so that way when I'm watching a cable, digital scrambled signal on the cable, I don't have to constantly turn this off and on, so I always leave it on automatic. Auto Motion Plus, always keep it on automatic. Ever since 1203 update, they really did a good job on this Auto Motion Plus. Smart LEDs, of course, they always have to be high, because you want to take the advantage of that peak brightness. And you guys know how I feel about color tone. I like to keep it on balanced level, standard. Now, someone was asking me, what about gamma? Is there anything that we can do about the gamma? You know, is it okay for us to move the gamma down? Yes, you can. You could move it down a little bit, but I don't recommend it. You could do it, but remember, the idea is for you not to crush your deep dark levels. I guess if you're gonna leave it, I would leave it at -2. Like, I wouldn't go -3. If you really need to, if you really feel like you need to move it down a little bit, I'd say -2. Leave it at -2. That's what I would say. That would be my recommendation. Like, if you really had to, you could leave it at -2. I personally would leave it at 0 or maybe -1, but I guess if you have to, you can leave it at -2. So as you can see, it looks fantastic, you know. And HDR in this game is truly eye-popping, you know, on certain levels. Not on all levels, but on certain levels of the game, certain dynamic time of the track, whether it's the sunset or sunrise or daytime, midday, or over cloudy, haze, you know, there's always, or in the nighttime, there's always going to be something that it's going to definitely, you know, take your breath away. There's certain levels, certain races, certain tracks in this game, when you're driving, you feel like, oh my God. Like, for example, this right here, just look at that. It almost looks real. And like I said, HDR looks fantastic on Gran Turismo Sport, and I highly recommend you guys go pick it up. I will do some more videos where I'm gonna position my racing wheel toward television so you guys can see me use the racing wheel, and you can see what's going on the screen as well. I might do that video on Friday. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.